It's Dumisani Washington of the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel, with our partners at the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs, here in Jerusalem, talking to different voices throughout the Israeli community. And we are so excited to have Eliaz Dandeker here of the Bene Israel community. I just had the opportunity to meet him today. He's been placed on our time. We've been here for a week just making this content, wanting to share with the rest of the world voices and faces of Israel that you may not have already seen and may not know. So first of all, Eliaz, thank you so much for coming.
Well, thank you for having me here.
I recognize that it was a long drive for you. Where you came from, what town?
I just came from Eilat. It's the most southern city in Israel.
Okay.
I'm just there with my wife, so I just arrived directly here to Jerusalem.
Drove all the way from Eilat to Jerusalem.
Yeah.
So we're so glad that he's actually here and just what I've heard is already fascinating. I've only known about the Indian Jewish community, in terms of India, the Burma or whatever region. In terms of, I've only known about the Bnei Menashe. I didn't know. Only recently that I known about the Bnei Israel, which is not the same community, a separate community, right? And that there are different communities of the Jewish people in India or in the region. So I want you to first of all tell us who you are. Give us a little background and we kind of get into it a little.
Okay,
Yes,
sure.
sir.
I'm Eliaz Dandeker, as you said. Mm-hmm. I'm a member of the Bene Israel community,
Yes, sir.
which is one of the largest Hebrew community from the Indian subcontinent. We have around 5 different communities, probably even more. Mm-hmm. And I'm a writer. I published around 5 books until now, and took part in several other books. Okay. I have an archive, a vast archive about Indian Jewry, and specifically about the Bene Israel of India. I'm a publisher. I have my own publishing house. Sure. It's called Kamadan Mukadam Publishing House. And it's a title from the presidents of the community, the leaders of the community from the 18th century. I'm a descendant of them. So I use those phrases. Yeah. And I also write articles, so I'm also a journalist. I also partake in art projects, specifically classical art photography, and I sometimes also act on stage. I just played a leading role in a play dealing with the son of the Rambam, Maimonides. So yeah, I played his son Abraham. And I have different projects here and there, and also I'm part of several new groups actually, and I took part in establishing some groups that bring forth actually our culture, our Jewish Indian culture, our Bene Israeli culture into mainstream Israel and the world, like the Malidah ceremony that we have, dealing with Elijah the prophet. And so today I'm the vice CEO of an organization called Masale, which is led by a person called Golan Tsariker. And we bring our culture to the masses,
Amazing.
Out of the darkness into the light.
Okay, so amazing. So we're going to start unpacking. Because there's so much that's there. First of all, in terms of your community, the Bnei Israel, when we were talking a little bit beforehand, you went all the way back to World War I and the British, and how some of the Bnei Israel came to what was called British Mandate Palestine later on. Then, so is that your family goes back to that time in terms of returning to the land, if I should say that?
As most people know, the British controlled most of the world a few centuries ago, and also they controlled most of India. And my family were part of the militias, actually, that were serving under the British Crown, and before that under the Mughal Muslim Crown, and also under the Hindu Maratha Empire. So they served in the British Army, at least from the 18th century. And in the First World War, there was the battle for Jerusalem, for Beersheba, for Haifa, and all that. And some of my family members came as soldiers, as officers in the British Territorial Army. And they marched in Jerusalem in 1917 with General Allenby, who took Jerusalem from the Ottoman Empire, the Turks, as some people refer to them. So, but my family came also before. I mean, members of the Bene Israel community came also before. The first hard evidence we have is from 1855. They visited Jerusalem. Then again, 1880, there was two people, two persons. One of them his name was Dr. Shikulker, another was Mr. Gosalker. This the surnames of the Bene Israel community, some of them.
Wow.
And they came in 1880. They traveled around the country and they wrote about it. They wrote a journal and it was published in 1887. Again, 1894, a couple came, the Pingles, and so on and so forth. We have documentation. I actually wrote an article about it.
Wow.
So we always prayed. I mean, when a person talks about the Jews of India, so there are different communities.
Okay.
Because the Indian subcontinent was vast, different independent countries, principalities, kingdoms, empires along the ages.
Okay.
So there is the Bene Israel community, which is my community, which is the largest of the Indian Jewry communities.
Okay. Okay.
We trace our history back to around 175 BC to a group of 14 shipwreck survivors that came from the Galilee into Egypt. From Egypt, they took ships towards India.
So this would be several years after the Bar Kokhba rebellion of the 145. So in other words, after the Roman destruction, you're saying 170?
No, 175 BC.
BC. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Today they don't say, they say BCE, I think.
Yeah, BCE. Yes,
They
sir. I'm
changed it,
sorry.
I'm
Okay.
sorry.
So before that. Okay, absolutely. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, before that, when
Before the
the second
destruction
temple
of
was
the second temple. Yes, sir.
the second temple was still working.
Yes, sir.
Everything was
Absolutely.
fine.
Wow,
There
wow,
was
wow.
actually they left in the beginning of what became the Hasmonite rebellion.
Okay.
More or less.
Yes, sir.
And the holiday of Hanukkah that we celebrate.
Yes,
we
sir.
left in the whole messy things, as we say. They left for Egypt. There was a Jewish, Hebrew community in Egypt.
Okay. Okay.
In the island of Yeb or Elephantine. There was another temple, a lot of the Kohanim or the priesthood clans.
Right.
And they were supposed to be part of the priesthood clan, so they say.
Yes, sir. Yes,
They went to Egypt, and from Egypt they took ships towards India. One ship, some people suggested that left that area, went to the eastern part of Africa, and they became one of the people known as the Lamba people of East Africa,
Yes, sir.
who also claim
Yes.
Hebrew descent.
Yes, sir.
So
Yes.
and I do agree with that.
Yes, sir.
And then they left to India. The ship was wrecked close to the shores of what is known today as the Kunakan coast. And there were 14 survivors.
Wow.
In our chronicles is 7 men and 7 women. And they actually consisted the base of the Bene Israel community, the first ones.
Wow.
And today there is a village called Nagao.
Okay.
And there is a big monument, an obelisk, and there's the graves of the community. And there are 7 graves that are said to belong to them, actually. So it's around 2,200 years ago.
Wow. Wow.
But this is one community, my community.
Okay.
And they were based in what is today known as Maharashtra.
Okay. Okay.
But there was also the Kochini community,
Okay.
what was known in ancient times as the Shingali Jews. And they had a principality, actually, which is considered today of the state of Kerala, in more or less south of India. There were the Baghdadis. They came around 1600, very recent. They were called Baghdadis because they came mostly from Muslim countries or Arab-speaking countries. They came as traders. And there's the Bene Menashe that you mentioned before.
Yes, sir.
They came from Manipur and Mizoram in the north of India, close to the Burmese border or the Myanmar border, as it's called today.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And for their chronicles, as much as I know, because we gathered a group that consisted of all these different kind of groups of the Indian Jewry. So they left the area of China, as much as I remembered, after the persecutions of one warlord they called Kalev, which is dog, or Caleb.
Yes, sir.
And then they came to north of India. And there's also other different small communities, like the Sephardic Jews that came to India, Ashkenazi Jews also came to India, Persian Jews and other types.
Wow. So you're describing Jewish communities within the Indian region
Yeah, subcontinent.
coming from different parts of the Jewish diaspora. In other words, coming and at different time
and different
periods as well.
timelines. Like said,
Yeah.
the Cochini Jews,
Yes, sir.
they said that the first Cochini Jews came with the ships of King Solomon
Okay.
when he was building the temple in
Yes, sir.
Temple Mount.
Yes, sir.
The Jewish temple, so the Hebrew temple actually.
Right.
I still call it Hebrew. That's why we didn't change the names. We are called Bene Israel, but all Jews are Bene Israel.
Yes, sir.
But they changed the name.
Right.
Because Jews were called from the tribe of Judah, of Judeans from the kingdom of Judah, or the region of Judah, or the province.
Right.
But everyone was Bene Israel.
Yes.
So
the northern and the southern kingdom.
Afterwards they split, but we never changed the name. So
Exactly.
we're still called Bene Israel.
Yes, sir.
But everybody's Bene Israel.
Sir. Yes, sir. Wow.
So, but they arrived in different timelines. So the Cochini Jews, the first ones, they say they came in the times of King Solomon, and afterwards there were several waves from 372 AD, and also afterwards from North Africa, from the Middle East, from Europe, from Asia, other parts, and we came 175 BCE. BCE. Yeah, sorry about that. I'm still kind of.
You're fine, yes, sir. Yeah.
So, and we came 2,200 years ago.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
As I said, the Baghdadi community started to come around 1600.
So the Iraq, the Babylon, the Baghdadi,
they call Baghdadis.
Yes, sir. Okay.
But it's not only from Baghdad.
Right. Okay.
Back then there was no independent state of Iraq.
Exactly.
Just in 1920s, I think.
Okay. Yes, sir.
It became like that more. But
yes,
from the whole area, the region, part of the Ottoman Empire, part of independent Muslim empires or countries or states. Okay. But they were called the Baghdadis. Okay. They could have come from Haleb in Syria, or from Baghdad itself, or from Basra, or from other places.
The former Babylonian Empire area.
After the Muslim rule.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Of that time, because it's around 400 years ago. It's not so that long.
Right.
In my point of view.
Right. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah.
And the Bnei Menashe, they said they were in China, for example, and they came afterwards to the north of India after persecutions, and they started to reconnect with the greater Hebrew or Jewish communities around 1954. It's very late. And there is also another community called the Bnei Ephraim or the Bnei Zion, and they started to reconnect into Judaism around 1981. So
and that's
really
another
recent
region of India too, a separate one. Okay.
I think Uttar Pradesh or something, because India is a federation of states. So they came from another area.
Right.
And sometimes there was no connection between these different communities, although they were all part of this Indian Jewry, greater Indian Jewry communities.
Wow.
Because, hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago,
yes, sir.
It took a long time to arrive from one area to another.
Right.
So I think the recorded connection that started between the communities was from 1500s onwards that we know of.
Right.
I mean, there's some evidence for the 10th century and the 11th century also.
Okay.
But we are still researching it. So.
So I have two questions I want to ask at once. Of course, I can't do that, right? So even if I were bilingual, which I'm not, I couldn't do both of the things. But so there's two things I want to do. You had mentioned something about the early 1950s, there being a community, them leaving and then coming back. In terms of kind of like some protests. I want to come to that. But before I do that, let me ask this question. I'll come back to that one.
Okay.
I have been told by certain people, and I've read a little bit, I don't know how accurate it is, I want to see with you, that in terms of the diaspora of the Jewish people, often underscored by persecution, pogroms, all those things, right? The hatred of the Jewish people that becomes this universal thing in Europe, obviously. Even the Ethiopian Jews, Bene Israel, they were attacked at times, right? Of course. I was told that relatively the Jewish community or communities in India fared better in terms of being able to be Jews, to live their lives. What is it? But I also was at the time at you. Didn't realize there were so many different Jewish communities there in India. What is your understanding of that in terms of being in a host country, being a diaspora people, right? But being in India, were you treated well, or how did it go for the Jews in India?
Specifically, the Hindu caste system.
Okay.
It consisted of different castes. So and India is a very pluralistic country.
Yes,
so when my ancestors arrived, they were treated as just another different caste of people.
Okay. Okay.
So generally speaking, they were not persecuted. We are also a minority, really. Like,
Yeah.
I think in the mid 19th century, we were around 8,000 people. That's not a lot.
Right.
Talking about the greater
Yes, sir.
subcontinent.
Yes, sir.
And we were allowed, and we respected the other different communities, the Hindus or the Muslims or the Christians or the Zoroastrians and
Yes, sir.
Buddhists and others.
Yes, sir.
So we were treated more or less equally, and they respected us. There was a great deal of tolerance towards our community. There were some occasions that the Indian Jewry was attacked. For example, some cases regarding the Cochin Jews, but especially when the Portuguese Inquisition arrived to India.
Okay.
So this was an European influence coming into India, and they devastated many of the Cochin Jews, some accounts say.
Wow.
And their numbers dwindled until 1947. They were around 2,700.
Wow.
And they say 500 years ago, perhaps, they were numbering in the hundreds or the tens of thousands, thousands at least.
Wow.
There's also actually, by the way, there are Christian communities in Kerala that they said they are descendants of the Cochin Jews. They were forced into converting to Christianity and so on and so forth. And there's some persecutions related to the sultan named Tipu, Tipu Sultan of Mysore, that actually my ancestors specifically fought against in 2 or 3 wars.
Wow.
And it is said that he burned some of the synagogues. But other than that, mostly the Jews or the Hebrews or the Bene Israeli communities were left alone.
Wow.
We took part, if the Hindus ruled, so we served in the Hindu army. If the Muslim ruled, we served in the Muslim army. When the British took over, we served in the British army. We changed our perspective depends on the ruling caste because we were small numbers, in small numbers. And that changed actually when Mahatma Gandhi, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi started the independence movement. There are some people, I mean, even before Gandhi, around 1857, 1858, there was the Great Indian Mutiny. So most of the Bene Israelis were loyal to the British. Some of them rebelled against the British. And I had ancestors on both sides that fought each other, unfortunately. But that changed when the Mahatma Gandhi arrived and started the movement for an independent India. Many of my family members, and my grandfather also marched with Gandhi in the Salt March of 1930. And they took more active roles for an independent India. Other relative members from the Irulkar family were lawyers and physicians that actually worked with Gandhi, Gandhiji. So, but mainly we were unharmed. We were allowed to practice our religion, practice our rituals. There was one different thing that we did. We tried to avoid eating cows.
Oh, really?
Because cows are sacred for the Hindus. So in order to avoid, you know.
So out of respect and also not avoid any type of clash or something like that.
Yeah, of course. So
okay, we won't do that.
We weren't vegetarians.
A
lot of people think that Indians are more vegetarian people. And we had a lot of vegetarian diet, but we were not vegetarians. Also the Hindus, some of them not vegetarian.
That's amazing. So then you've confirmed for me, so then relatively speaking.
We were not persecuted. We were treated as equals. We served in high-ranking positions in the academy, in the army, in arts, craftsmanship. So.
And it's interesting that some of the persecution that did come was more exported from Portugal in terms of
mainly from Europe.
Yes, sir, coming from that way. That's amazing. It's amazing. Okay, so now to my second one. You had mentioned something very fascinating to me. Your descendants then returned to the land, I guess shortly after the state of Israel has declared independence.
In 1931, they started slowly but surely. There was a Zionist movement in India that was rejuvenated in 1918 because there was also an invitation for the first Zionist convention, Congress, the first Zionist Congress in 1897. And
you all
Theodore
received
Herzl,
an invitation.
Theodore Herzl sent an invitation to the Jewish community, the Bene Israeli community.
Yes, sir.
They respectively declined because they said that they are waiting for the times of the Messiah. But they will support financially.
Okay.
So they send money, and they said, but we're waiting for the Messiah.
Okay.
Until we return back to the land of Israel.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That all changed in the First World War when soldiers and officers came and they saw the land, they saw the old yeshuv or the old settlements.
Soldiers from your community within the British Army.
That served in the
Yes,
British
sir.
Army. They
Exactly.
saw
Yes, sir.
the Yemenite Jews, they saw the Ashkenazi Jews, they saw Moroccan Jews, they saw the Mustarbim, which is one of the oldest Jewish communities that stayed in Israel, for example. They never left, most of them.
Yes, sir.
So they saw all these different Jews from everywhere. They saw Jerusalem, they saw Hebron.
Right.
And then emotional resurfacing of the movement of coming back.
Right.
See, all our brothers and sisters are coming from all over the world, from Africa, from Europe, from Asia, from the Americas.
Yeah.
What about us?
Wow.
We have to take part in it.
Now, Paul, I'm
yeah.
blown away. I want to keep going. So they initially declined the Zionist invitation.
We'll visit, but we won't come and settle till the Messiah comes.
But when the soldiers came and they saw the land, almost like a reconnection to the land, that was like an emotional response that maybe we need to do. That's a fascinating. I don't want to stop you, but that's amazing. That's amazing. So yes, go ahead. I'm sorry. Yes,
so from 1931, a small number started to make Aliyah or immigrate to British Mandate Palestine, Eretz Israel. Before that, it was called the Great Assyria. The name changed along the ages. Sometimes I just call
Israel's
the area Canaan.
Israel's
so
enemies changing the name from what it originally was.
Sometimes I just refer to the land as Canaan.
You make it easy.
Yes, sir. Leave me alone. I'm a Canaanite.
Right.
So,
yes, sir. Makes sense.
So from 1931, they started small drops. Started to come, settle, take part in it. In 1947-48, a group of around between 40 to 50 ex-Second World War veterans, mainly combat veterans, armor infantry, from India, Jews from India, Bene Israel mainly, but also others. They came to fight for the Israeli independence. We have records, we're still investigating it, that around 28 of them fell in battle.
Wow, okay.
And from 1949, the Bene Israeli started to make Aliyah, to immigrate in greater numbers, in groups. And my family started to come back in 1949.
Wow. Okay.
Unfortunately, what was later called the first civil rights protests in Israel occurred. They were led by Isaac Dandeker, which is also a family member of mine. And a lot of the brothers and sisters of my grandmother took part in it. There was discrimination. We were not Ashkenazi, we were not Sephardic. So we went to the streets. But those people took part in the freedom fight for India's independence. So they marched with Gandhiji. They just sat. They had the silent strikes, those silent protests. That's the name of the first protest from 1951 to 1952. For equal rights.
Yes, sir.
And some of them, around 575, went back to India. I mean, the first plane was 115, and then largely grew to 575.
Yes, sir.
But the old promise to come back to the land of our ancestors, where the first 14 came, the first shipwreck survivors came, it was stronger. So from 1953, we started to come back. Some didn't leave at all. We started to come back, and between 1960 to 1964, there was the second wave of protests, led mainly by a person called Samson Kileker, which he was called the Indian Jewish Israeli Martin Luther King Jr. In the newspapers. I'm not inventing it.
Right. Yes, sir.
This is how he was referred to for equal rights. I guess from 1964 onwards, more or less, we started to assimilate in the greater Israeli culture, as we say. It was still being built by different communities, different people, different ethnicities also, because there was not only the Hebrews or the Jews, there was Muslims, Christians, Druze, otherwise, and also Samaritans. And
yes, sir, absolutely. So I want to dig a little bit deeper. This is fascinating. So basically here in the early 1950s, some of the Bene Israel begin to make Aliyah in smaller numbers, but they begin to face discrimination, racial discrimination, basically.
Yeah,
They,
which
like
you call
you
today
say-
racial discrimination. Yeah.
So you were saying because, and the overarching thing seemed to be because you were not Ashkenazi or Sephardi, right?
And not Yemenite Jews. So
Yemenite,
we
yes,
were
sir.
kind of, they didn't know who we are.
So some
The
of the
majority.
discrimination came from were they questioning your Hebrew identity? Or
Yes.
so that's what it was.
Especially in the second wave of demonstrations from 1960 to 1964. Yeah.
Okay.
They questioned it, and we came with a lot of evidence. I mean,
Yes,
my
sir.
ancestors built synagogues from the 1700s, and some of them before.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So the Jewry of India,
Right.
it's in very old
Right.
Hebrew
right.
communities,
Right.
established Hebrew communities.
Right.
But when they came here,
Right.
so in the beginning at least, there
Yes,
were
sir.
a lot of difficulties
Right.
accepting us
Right.
as different.
You know what, Eliaz, what's been fascinating to me so I'm a Christian pastor, been a supporter of Israel for a long time, and of the many things that I've been fascinated about learning about both the modern state of Israel, right, and the diaspora, is that here you have this imposed exile from the Romans, right? The time of the
Some
Romans.
before, some afterwards, but yeah.
Absolutely, yes, sir. And then the ultimate destruction of the temple, the Bar Kokhba rebellion, boom, the Jewish people, with the exception of the small group that stays in the land,
which was later on called Mustarbim.
Mustalum, yes,
for example.
I'm glad you were telling us that part. Here's a return in that one of the things that's fascinating is that the Jewish people as a tribe, Israel as a tribe, so separated from each other for such a long time that here's this reunion, right?
Yeah.
But because it's been such a long time, here you're his brother and but they don't recognize each other, or they're not sure about each other's story. So it sounds like for your family, part of what it was that you all knew who you were.
Yeah.
And you had all, as they say on the street, all the receipts, all the everything,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly.
Herzl invited you to the Congress, but others didn't know who you were.
Exactly.
And because of that, shunned you with that. It changed, but there was initial, almost like we're related, but we don't know that we're related. So almost like a putting off. So you said because of that, some of them went back to India. Maybe were they saying that we don't want to fight, we don't want to do this, or we don't feel accepted, so therefore we're leaving? What was their mindset?
Mainly because they thought they're coming back and they saw their brothers and sisters from all over the world.
Yes, sir. Yes,
different colors, but doesn't matter because we all come from the same origin.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So let's build our nation back again from the ashes that was set afire before, thousands of years ago.
Yes, sir.
And they were discriminated. They were not accepted, so they left. I mean, they tried to stay.
Yes, sir.
They went on demonstrations. As I said, the first civil rights demonstrations after the creation of the State of Israel is the 1951 Bene Israel demonstration, which is called the silent protests.
Silent protests.
Yes, non-violent protests, holding hands, going together.
Yes, sir.
Very much like the civil rights movement in the U.S., for example, in the 1960s and before and afterwards.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
In Selma and other places, of course.
Absolutely.
And that's why they also saw, for example, they took examples from Mahatma Gandhi, for example.
Yes, sir.
And they marched with him in the Salt March in 1930 and onwards,
Yes, sir.
like my grandfather, for example.
Sir.
And also for Martin Luther King
Yes,
in the U.S.
Yes, sir.
They saw a joint vision for equality.
Wow.
And they left at the end, some of them, not all of them, of course, they left by the promise of our ancestors,
Yes, sir.
our mothers and fathers from old, and Elijah the prophet, because we have a whole fetish about Elijah the prophet, that he was revealed to us. There's a place in India also, it's a pilgrimage area.
Similar to the Druze, like a little bit, right? I know they're not considered themselves Jewish, but their connection to is it to Elijah as well? Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah, some.
Okay, yes, sir. Yeah, yes,
also
sir.
to Moses or Musa.
Yes, sir. Okay.
So actually, some narratives of ours say that we are descendant from Moses and from Aaron, the Bene Israel. Some say, we still have to investigate it, but
absolutely,
there's some claims for that.
Amazing.
So and also like, for example, the Shomronim or the Samaritans or Shomrim, which is a different group of Israelites, but they're not in the general Jewish population, I would say. And they also, the different narratives,
Yes, sir.
but there's a connection
Right.
between all of them.
Right. Right.
And so there were discriminations. We left, and then we said we cannot leave. We came back. But for example, today I can say that
Yeah.
in my family,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
my wider family, my cousin, second cousin, third cousin,
Yes, sir.
we are married to all the different Jewish communities
Right.
that consist the Jewish world,
Yes.
or
Yes, sir.
from Africa, from Asia, from Europe, from the Americas, from
Ashkenazi,
so-
Sephardi, Mizrahi, there's all
Ethiopian Jews and
Yes,
Beta
sir.
Israel,
Yes,
for
sir.
example.
Yes, sir.
But I think in the beginning, in the 1940s, 1950s,
Yes, sir.
the Beta Israel,
Yes, sir.
which were also here
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
in small numbers,
Yes,
and
sir.
also the Bene Israel, both of us were considered kind of exotic fantasy
Yes,
that
sir. Yes,
we
sir.
heard about people, the
Right.
lost 10 tribes.
Right, right,
Some people
right.
call me the lost 10 tribes. Say, I'm not lost.
Right. I know exactly.
never
right.
lost.
Right. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You're the lost 10 tribe, maybe, I don't know.
But right, right.
So,
Amazing.
because in ancient times it
Right.
was more
Right.
logical
Yes, sir.
to arrive
Right.
to India
Right.
than to Germany.
Yes, sir.
I'm
Absolutely.
talking about 2,000 years ago and
Yes,
more.
sir.
I mean more, like
Absolutely.
3,000 years ago.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So,
Wow. So then they left and they came back. So basically, so you're saying they came back saying, "This is our homeland. We're going to return." They
Yes.
left because they were disappointed with what happened, how they
Yes.
were discriminated.
Yes,
But
exactly.
they thought they returned back. Sounds like pretty soon, or maybe about a year or two or so. They came.
Yeah, because they were disillusioned also
Yes, sir.
because they were labeled as troublemakers when they went back to India.
Right.
Why did you do this?
Right.
Why did you do this? People didn't understand.
Right.
And also the ancient promise. The main thing is the promise
Yes,
of
sir.
our ancestors that came from generation to generation.
Yes, sir.
I mean,
Yes,
we pray in the synagogues or we pray at home.
Right.
We do the ceremonies, the Malida ceremony that I said. It's an ancient ceremony of peace offering.
Okay.
And we always pray for Elijah the prophet and our return. So how can we
Right. Wow.
just forget about it after 2,200 years?
Right.
So they started to come back.
Wow. So what's also amazing, I want to revisit this one last thing one time, because again, that still blows me away, that the soldiers come. First of all, there's a general understanding in the community that when Messiah comes, we will come. We will return to the land. He'll bring us to the land. But again, they see the land. They see the different parts of the Jewish community in the land, and they feel such a connection that's there that they begin to come. Was there debate? Do you, maybe in your records or something, was there a debate? In other words, obviously this is a change of mind, right? A teshuva, if you will, right? Attorney. Was there a debate because of that? Were some of them still not wanting to do that?
Well, of course, there was a debate,
Okay.
but the enthusiasm, they're the first ones. As I said before, there was also other passengers, Bene Israeli passengers that came in the middle 19th century and they started to talk about it, write about it. And in the opening of the Suez Canal, it was faster to arrive here.
Wow.
In the ports of Jaffa or...
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So, and Jerusalem, the city, they would pray for, the city of heaven, the streets filled of gold, as they were thinking.
Sir. Wow.
So, this ancient promise was very strong, especially in the younger generation, the younger crowd that served as officers or soldiers in the British Empire and came here.
Okay.
And some of them actually, unfortunately, shell-shocked when they came back. There is one captain that he took photos of Israel during the First World War of this area.
Yes, sir.
And he served in the Battle of Beersheba and other places. He was shell-shocked, but he photographed this area. He wrote about this area. His name was Captain Dandeker. He was a doctor also. And he passed away when he was 36, very young, with little kids.
Wow.
And because he was shell-shocked and the effects of the war.
Wow.
But his photographs, his words carried on.
Wow.
As well as others.
Right.
So the debate...
Inspiring another generation that they
They
see
said
this.
the times of the Messiah have arrived because they saw Hebrews from all over the world, from all over the corners of the world, gathering back together as a nation.
Wow.
So that is, generally speaking, what convinced also the older generation that this is the times of the Messiah.
Right. So it's
These
funny,
are the times
that theological adjustment, in other words, instead of the literal Messiah bringing us to the land, almost like a spirit of a time, an era of a messianic era of Messiah bringing. So it's almost like they, in seeing that, they said because we're physically seeing our brothers and sisters from literally all over the world return. So this feels like this is a Messiah move. It sounds like what you're describing.
Yeah,
Yes,
maybe in some said also that
yes, sir.
the sheer action that we are returning
Yes,
back
sir.
to the motherland,
Yes, sir.
or the fatherland.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So these will bring,
Wow.
they hasten the times of the Messiah, actually.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Wow.
So, and actually,
Yeah.
in the Bene Israelis, for example, they used to say that Ima Hodu Abba Israel. That means that Mother India, Father Israel. We had like the duality of this.
Wow, wow. Wow.
Because we were respected in India, we were treated as equals.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So we were Indians, but we were also Israelites.
Wow. Wow.
So
Wow.
returning back home, so it was kind of a...
You remind me of some of my Persian Jewish friends who said that life was relatively okay until the revolution of the Ayatollahs.
The 79 revolution.
Yes,
yeah.
sir. And then everything changed, of course, for everyone, not just obviously the Jewish people, but everything changed. And then there was more of a, this is not our homeland anymore. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yeah, well, there was, because the Bene Israelis were not only in India,
Yes, sir.
or what was considered the British Raj of India.
Okay.
We were also in Aden in Yemen, for
Okay.
example. There was a community of Bene Israelis from India.
Okay.
Also in Karachi,
Okay.
in modern-day Pakistan,
Okay. Wow,
and
wow.
also in Burma.
Yes, sir.
But, for example, I can say about the Bene Israelis from Pakistan, what became Pakistan,
Yes, sir.
the 1947 partition of India and Pakistan
Yes, sir.
brought with it a lot of, unfortunately, anti-Semitic attacks in Pakistan.
Okay.
The establishment of the State of Israel,
Right.
the ongoing emotions against Jews from other parts of the world.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And the Karachi Bene Israeli were, and my grandfather, my mother's father, he came from Karachi.
Okay.
They left, they ran away. There was the expulsion of Jews, first in 1947, and then in 1967 after the Six-Day War
Yes, sir.
in Israel,
Yes, sir.
in this area.
Yes, sir.
And the synagogue was destroyed.
Wow. Wow.
In 1988, it was completely destroyed.
Wow. Wow.
The cemetery is still there, the Bene Israeli cemetery. I have contacts with some people there, and it's very difficult. I mean, my great-grandfather is buried there.
Wow. Wow.
And I went to India, and I documented around 100 cemeteries,
Wow.
between 5,000 to 7,000 tombstones, the synagogues, the community. But I can't go across the border and just photograph my great-grandfather's tombstone.
Wow.
And it's still there.
Wow.
And the Jews they just fled, or the Bnei Israel, they fled from Pakistan, unfortunately.
Right.
And sometimes they were attacked because some of the Hindus thought they were Muslims, and they attacked them, and some of the Muslims thought they were Hindus. They were kind of caught between both worlds.
Wow.
Back then. So,
That's amazing.
and there's still some Jews left in Pakistan today, but it's unofficial. Some of them hiding their identity.
Wow.
And the whole history is almost untold. And because generally speaking, I can say I'm a Hebrew also from Pakistan, also from India.
Right.
Because my grandfather is there, my other grandfather is from there.
Right.
But it's the same community.
Right. Do you, in your speaking and lecturing in this amazing book, I wish I could read Hebrew, it just looks so beautiful. First of all, tell us the title of it. I'm sharing it on the screen there. What's the name?
It's called the Jamat, Inspirational People from the Bnei Israel Community, both women and men. There were leaders from 300 years ago, 200 years ago, 100 years ago.
Wow.
Some of them younger than me that live today.
Wow.
And I took, like, for me, what is inspiring, because we are diverse people.
Yes, sir.
From the religious point of view,
Yes, sir.
from secular point of view, from the political point of view, from a gender point of view.
Yes, sir.
We are so diverse, but we are Bnei Israelis. So I took inspirational people that I interviewed, or that of course, people 300 years ago, so for the historical information. And I worked with an artist called Dev Yaakov Awasker, a friend of mine. He's an artist. He sketched 50 different individuals.
Amazing.
And I wrote like short biographies of each of them.
Yeah.
And they're part in history.
Wow.
In Jewish history, in Indian history, in world history. So different sketches and different.
And this is.
This is actually the first president of the Bnei Israel community. His name is Samuel Ezekiel Dandeker, or Samaji Hasaji Dandeker. as they used to pronounce his name. He died in 1796, and actually he's my 7th grandfather.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow,
he's
wow,
my
wow.
ancestor, and he was the first president of the Bene Israel community
Right.
from 1784.
Yes,
He
sir.
built the first synagogue in Bombay, or Mumbai, as it's called today, in 1796.
Okay.
And he was slashed, murdered, killed, poisoned, or passed away
Oh, wow.
in a city called Ernakulam in Cochin, where his tombstone was found just a few months ago.
Really?
His original tombstone, I was looking for it
Wow.
for 12 years. I
Wow.
found the tombstone,
Wow.
and now I need to know how I can preserve it, save it, bring it, I don't know.
Wow, that's amazing.
And his grave was found as well.
Wow.
It was neglected, it was forgotten, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
What I did when I went to India
Okay.
is to really document
Right.
our culture, our history, also the people. There's still like around 4,000 Bene Israelis live in India.
In India, okay. Yes, sir.
In Israel, we are around 85,000,
Okay.
you know.
Okay.
But
Yes, sir.
from all the different communities also,
Right,
because we
right.
married, as I said, Bnei Menashe,
Yes.
Ashkenazi Jews, Ethiopian Jews, other
Yes,
Jews.
sir. Yes, sir.
And
Oh, wow.
for
Amazing.
example, my wife is an Ashkenazi Jew.
Yes, sir.
Einat she's a
sir.
descendant of the Baal Shem Tov, one of
Mm.
the leading rabbis of the Hasidic movement.
Ah, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
From the-
Wow, wow, wow.
Yeah. So,
That's amazing.
and what I did, I went to India. I wanted to document it before it all disappears,
Yes,
because our cemetery, the community left, so the
Right.
cemeteries are
sir. Right.
or overtaken by the jungles and
Right.
shrubbery, or
Right.
just land developers. They were
Wow.
destroyed. I saw
Yeah.
tombstones from the 17th, from the 1600s,
Wow.
just being destroyed. I took photo and it was
Yeah.
destroyed. So I documented it.
Right.
I documented the synagogues,
Mm.
which don't have what we call a minyan.
Okay.
Need like 10 people
Yes,
to
sir.
in order to make a
Right,
prayer. Yeah.
Right, right. Yes, sir.
And you don't find it anymore.
Wow.
There is an area where my ancestor that you showed before,
Yes, sir.
he built a synagogue, the first synagogue in Bombay.
Okay.
It's called Israel Mohalla, in the neighborhood of the Israel.
Wow.
We call it the Israel.
Wow.
And
Wow,
today, like, there is no, maybe one family, maybe even not then.
Wow. Wow.
And there is not, the synagogues are being closed.
Yes, sir.
Some of them are not being preserved even, being destroyed. Some of them are landmarks,
Yes,
but
sir. Yes, sir.
still, it's like crumbling into dust.
When you lecture and you share this information and everything, and do you do it in Israel primarily, or do you travel outside to other nations and everything? How, when you're sharing it, who is your main target audience?
Well, before COVID, I used to travel around the world
Yes, sir.
and lecture in India, lecture in other places,
Oh,
in
wow.
Europe, and
Yes, sir.
I lectured also in Australia, I think, once.
Okay.
But after COVID,
Yeah.
you know, and after the discovery of the Zoom, or you
Yes,
know,
sir.
so it's from the
Yes, sir. The
from
virtual
the comfort of
meeting.
my home. So I do lecture around the world.
Okay. Okay.
I started to lecture for our younger generation of the Bene Israelis that
Right.
as a child, I was never taught at school, high school, university, and I was taught about my community,
Right. Right.
talking about the creation of Israel.
And you were born in Israel.
I was born in Israel.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
My great-grandparents were part of the founders of the city of Or Akiva, for example, in Israel,
Okay.
where my grandmother, their daughter, and my grandfather, and everybody who lived and
Right.
passed away, unfortunately,
Yes, sir.
as
Yes,
time
sir.
does.
Yes, sir.
And so I said, but where is my history? Why aren't I in the textbooks?
Right. Right. Right.
Where is my family? Where is my community? At home, I heard stories. My grandfather was a storyteller.
Right.
So he's talking about the survivors of the shipwreck and
Right.
this and the queen of that and the king of that and
Right.
the leader and the Raja of this. And I said, okay, I'm hearing all these stories at home.
Right.
I'm not seeing it outside.
Right. Right.
Not on the television,
Right.
not in the computer, not in the books.
Yes,
Where
sir.
is it?
Wow.
And when I was in high school, I was around 16, 17.
Okay.
I was in the library and I saw a book, an old book, the Jewish communities around the world. And I was looking for the Indian community.
Right.
And I saw a short like reference to this ancestor that you
Right.
showed.
Wow.
I saw a name of my ancestor. My eyes were lit. My soul was on fire. I mean, I just took it.
Wow.
I said, sorry.
It's mine.
And it's mine. It's my ancestor. My
Wow.
birthright.
Right. Right.
So
wow.
I took it.
Wow. Wow.
And I said, but this short line,
Wow.
where are our books? Where is our history? Where is our culture?
Right.
So I started by telling people. I started by writing. I started by sharing.
Right. Right.
Not everybody liked it. So my first lecture in university, for example, was around 2010, 2011.
That was, where was that? Here
In the Tel Aviv University.
Tel Aviv, okay, yes sir, yes sir.
So one of the lecturers, and that was a class about the Jewish diaspora.
Okay, okay.
And I was lecturing. Everybody had to lecture about their own heritage or whatever.
Right.
And so I lectured about the Bene Israel, is my heritage.
Mm-hmm.
And we were sitting with the lecturer, the professor, and he was talking to me about, I think you're over-glorifying your community. I said, am I over-glorifying? So I brought a ton of information.
Wow.
This is over-glorifying?
Wow.
And he was like stunned. I said, so, okay.
Wow.
Because you don't understand in one subject, you don't know,
Right.
doesn't mean you can not learn.
Right.
We can learn in any age, in any position, and in any place.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So
wow.
I started to lecture
Yes, sir.
from, in the beginning, for the younger generation of the Bene Israel. Then I started to lecture for the wider Israeli public, and then I started to lecture in Indian academic places, to other scholars, and I lectured in Europe. There is one a group called the Kesher, that a lot of people come from all over the place, all over the world, sorry. And I started, because I'm also a disabled war veteran, so I started to talk about with other, with Muslims and with Christians, and to reconnect, to bring more a connection, to see our not to put the emphasis only on differences, but the similarities.
Right, right. It's amazing.
So yeah.
Have you lectured in the States before?
I wrote actually my first article.
Okay.
It was in 2005.
Okay.
After I finished my army service, I worked on cruise ships as a security officer and chief security officer.
Right.
And there was a group of American Jews, and they came and they saw we Israelis, and we spoke Hebrew, of course.
Right.
And they said, well, "Are you Yemenite?"
Right.
And I said, "No, I'm a Bene Israeli Jew." What is that? I said, "Well, my ancestors came from India." The Jews in India? I said, "Yes." There are even Jews in Ethiopia. And they didn't understand. I was a little bit sarcastic. And they said, "We heard about them, the legends." I said, Indiana Jones. I mean, what are you talking about? It's obvious. Everybody knows about it. I mean, you just open a book. It's your own people. Learn about your people. And then one person found it very interesting, and he said he's writing for. It was a long time ago. I don't know if he's still with us. I mean, sorry if.
Yes, sir.
So there was a magazine or a newspaper called the Lapid, which is the torch.
Okay.
And he heard that I talked to these people, and I said I'm a Bene Israeli, and I knew a lot about our culture because my grandfather used to tell the stories again and again, and just repeating it.
Wow.
And so, and I said that my grandfather was a very dark-skinned man with blue eyes. He said, it's not possible. Wow. And I showed them a picture. My grandfather was.
Wow.
So they didn't understand, and I explained because. I had this knowledge, and he heard it, and he asked me to write an article. So I wrote my first article to this American newspaper. Wow. I'm not sure if they published it, but I did write the article. Right. So that was my first time, but I did lecture afterwards in groups that consisted also in the U.S. through Zoom, mainly.
Yes, sir.
The U.S., Canada, also Brazil, for example.
So now, after that first experience that you described in Tel Aviv, you got a little pushback from the professor, right? Generally now, as you lecture, wherever it is, right, whether it's in the West or whatever, what is the response to you generally when they're hearing the information? Well,
mostly I think that people have this conception about how does a Jew look like.
Right.
For example, especially, I'm sorry to say, especially in the U.S.
Especially in the U.S.
You know, what you see in Hollywood is
he doesn't look like Jerry Seinfeld.
For example, he's a white-skinned Jew, he's not good at sports, and is complaining a lot, and they control this and Hollywood or whatever. And when a person like me comes along, or an Ethiopian Jew, or a Yemenite Jew, or a Bene Menashe Jew, and they say, are you really Jewish? Are you sure? Did your ancestors prayed for the gods of snake? The gods of the snakes. I mean, I respect all religions, and some of the religions do pray for to the snakes and everything. But we were Hebrews all along the way. And people say, even in Israel sometimes, they ask me, where am I from? Am I a dark-skinned Chinese person.
Right.
And where did I come from? Usually they say Yemenite because
Yes, sir. Yes,
they
sir.
know more about the Yemenite Jews.
Yeah.
And then I said the Bene Israel of India.
Wow.
There are Jews in India?
Wow.
It's like a revelation.
Right.
Say, why is it a revelation? If I would say I'm a Jew from Germany or a Jew from Poland or a Jew from Spain, it was not a revelation.
Right.
So why is a Jew from India or Ethiopia or Nigeria is a revelation? Why? So, but this is one of the reasons I went into this. And that's why they also asked me from universities in Israel, and they have my books in universities in Israel and universities in the US and Canada and Australia and the UK.
Yes, sir.
And they asked me to lecture about the history because I also have the references, I have the knowledge, I have also the evidence.
Right.
And I think more and more, that's why I also lectured in India, for example, because in India, the country that my family came from, most people in India don't know about the Indian Jews or the Indian Hebrews. They don't know about Bene Israel or Kuchini or Bene Menashe. And when I talk about it, they were fascinated.
Wow.
And when I went to the villages and was looking on the hunt for cemeteries, for example, only the elder people knew. I saw like people like they were in their 90s with a white mustache and a dark skin coming and you are from the Israel. Go to the mountain there and you find it. And I went and I found graves and I found the Star of David and everything.
Wow.
So I think more and more people are becoming more aware that Jews or Hebrews look very much different than what they think we look like.
Wow.
You know, because we do come from everywhere. The diaspora was everywhere. There was also movements, for example, in the 1930s and before in the 1930s, but also in the 19th century, of people from African Americans. For example, they said they are descendants from the tribes of Israel. They were kidnapped and and they were forced into slavery in America. It's not for nothing. They said, when Moses was in Egypt, let my people go. All these songs. It's not only because they got expelled. Some of them.
Absolutely.
I mean, we are brothers and sisters of the same nation.
Absolutely.
You know, there was an actor, an American actor. He passed away just recently. Forgot his name.
Black American actor?
A Black American actor, yeah.
Not Sidney Poitier.
Not Sidney Poitier. He came from the Caribbean. I mean, he was born in the U.S. but came from the Caribbean.
Yes, sir.
Yefet Koto.
Oh, right. Yes, sir.
Yefet Koto.
Igbo, I believe.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, but
Absolutely.
also he talked about his Hebrew ancestors.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
You know, and people were looking at him, and he talked about that he was going with a yarmulke or a kippah, as we call it, and they said, "How can you be a Jew? You're black."
Right. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Absolutely.
And you can see there's a lot of Jewish black communities or black Jewish communities in the U.S. or in the Caribbean going back for centuries.
Yes, sir.
And sometimes when I talk about it, people say, it's fantasy, it's not true, they came after. I said, no, there's research, read about it.
Right. Absolutely.
It's there.
Absolutely.
Just look for it. And today we have books, about this subject, about the Bene Israeli subject, about other communities, also in China, the Kaifang Jews, for example. And
wow. Yes, sir.
The Hebrew nation went all over the world. There's not one place that we didn't go.
Right.
I mean, from South America before the discovery of by the Spaniards.
Exactly.
And in North America, in Europe, in Africa, in Asia, in Australia. I mean, even the Maori some of them have traditions that go into the tribe of God, for example. And because I worked abroad for 5 years, so I talked to people, and all of a sudden people started to talk about it. I sat with people from Afghanistan, the Pashto or the Pathan, as they call it in India, the Pashtuns, and they were talking about traditions. They were Hebrew, and the Afridi tribe, which is Ephraim, and Ephraim.
Right.
And so we went all over the place, and you can find it in archaeology, you can find it in different communities, you can find, I don't know. Like,
so whenever these type of conversations are happening, and there's so much rich content, I could do for hours and hours. So I am gonna have to land a plane. But I wanna do this. A couple things. We're almost there. So you're sharing this. Yes, we work with the various Jewish communities within the United States, everything, and there's even Black Americans who, whether they trace their ancestry like to the Igbo or not, some of them have felt such a calling, they've converted to Orthodox Judaism. They've done
Some of
different
them,
things, all of these types of things, right? And so this is absolutely, this is a discussion that's being had more and more in the United States. Tell me, when you're doing this, let me ask you this question as it pertains to Israel, the nation.
Okay.
Right? As you, obviously, you're born and raised here, you served in IDF and everything, so you're well aware of what the West, or what we call the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. You're aware of all of that. You served and everything. And you're also, I'm sure, aware of the Israel being called an apartheid state, all these types of things, ideologically how it's attacked. Your family, your heritage, your own personal experience, everything. What is it that you want people to know about the land in which you were born, your homeland, the Hebrews from which you descended? When you're hearing it, whether it's negative stuff, whether it's United Nations attacking Israel, that type of thing, what is it that you want people, particularly in the West, in particular, as you said, in the U.S. as well, because there's a big ideological fight.
Yeah.
What do you want them to know about your homeland?
I want people to know the place they're talking about, to know the people they're talking about. Also, of course, the Jews and also the Muslims and also the Christians here.
Yes, sir.
And because people sometimes have their opinions, or they forge their opinions without even knowing all the sides. You can hear there are different sides, not only two sides. There are many sides. You need to learn about it. Yes. And when I served in the IDF, I served in Gaza, also as a regular soldier, and also in the reserves. I fought several wars. I was injured in combat several times. And also my father before me. He served in Lebanon. He served in Yom Kippur War, 73. He served in the trenches of the Hatashah War in 68 until 70. And he told me, I grew up in a pluralistic country. He had friends in the same building. There were Muslims, there were Hindus, there were Zoroastrians, there were Christians, and he ate with them, he sat with them, he played with them. They didn't care he's a Jew or Bene Israel or... And when people talk about Israel, saying that yes, there are problems, yes, there is prejudice, yes, we need to work about it. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And about color, about, you know, I'm talking when there were the bomb attacks, and I was looked upon as well because of my darker skin and my beard, and said, you know, they looked at me as well as a hazard. And I was sometimes, actually, I'm going to tell you, I was attacked by some Israeli Jews that thought I was an Arab, and I was attacked by Arabs Israeli Arabs that thought I was you know, a Jew. So I was attacked with both sides, and I was looking at myself. Why can't we just stop and talk? Of course, there is a war. It's not perfect. But Israel is much more than that. I mean, you can be, in one point, you can be whomever you want here. Another point, there is discrimination. So it's not, it's not just one-sided or two-sided. It's many sides. People need to know how the life in Israel is. You know, when I was in the U.S., for example, I lived there for a while. Working on the cruise ships and everything, they thought I was living in a tent and I had a camel. There are camels in Israel. The desert is in Israel. There are tents in Israel. There are different communities in Israel. There's also snow from Hermon Mountain, and sometimes in Jerusalem. There are forests. There are Jews. There are Muslims. There are Christians. There are Druze. I served with Druze people. I served with Muslims in the IDF, for example. I served with Christians. I serve with many different types of I don't know, types of people, because we are all the same. Doesn't matter our color, our religion, our creed, our sexual orientation. Doesn't matter. We are all part of the greater humanity. So if people want to understand about Israel, they should see all the sides. I don't think there is a right and a wrong, but there are people that don't talk to each other, and then becomes a matter of prejudice. And but if you go in a party, for example, in Beersheba or in Tel Aviv or in the north, in the forest or whatever, you see people from all types and shapes and sizes and colors and creeds and religions dancing together. You see people are friends from different parts. I mean, we sit together, we talk about the problems, and we talk about the coming back together. And this is also one of the reasons I talked so much about my community, because we lived in a pluralistic place. There is no reason it can be here as well. I mean, you go around in hospitals, you see Muslim doctors, you see Jewish doctors, you see doctors from the Jews of Ethiopia, you see doctors from the Jews of Russia, you see, from all over the place, from Nazareth, from Christians, Muslims. You see commanders that are Jews in the police forces or in the army or in politics.
Wow.
Also in politics. I mean, the Israeli parliament consists of, yes, Jews, women, men, Muslims, Druze, So the diversity here is so abundant, I think, that people don't see it. For example, it's not perfect. But yes, there's a lot of openness here. You can be a LGBT and go around and in compared to some other countries around us, or not only around us, and you can also be attacked. It is possible, but it's also possible to go around freely. That's why I have friends from all the different communities, different religions, different creeds, and sometimes we talk about also my army service, because I served in Gaza. I fought. I was a short-range assault sniper. But I do believe in peace. I want to talk. I want to lay down the guns. Let's talk. Let's get to know each other, because we have a joint history. I don't think, from my point of view, this country belongs to us and you are. No. Let's talk together. Let's live together. Doing it's complicated. But what the world shows about Israel is like, people told me, why don't you go back to Germany or Russia? I said, I never came from Germany or Russia.
I'm not from there.
Yeah, I never came from Germany or Russia.
Wow.
You're a Jew because you're... The conceptions people have is because of the lack of knowledge. I mean, all of us are part of this country. Doesn't matter how you call this country. Parts of it, you can call it Israel, parts of it you can call it Palestine, you can call it Canaan, you can call it the Greater... It doesn't matter. The name changed during the ages, but we're all part of this place that consists of all of us. So I think that if people are more open to knowledge, to history, to the openness that there's more than one opinion or two opinions or 10 opinions. You can find a way to converge together and sit around the table. And what people, sometimes when I go outside the country, people look at me in despise because I'm Hebrew or because I'm Israeli. And sometimes people think I'm Muslims and they look at me and despise. So I'm saying, why should people, a person that doesn't know me even, look at me in this way? It doesn't matter if I'm a Jew or I'm a Muslim or a Christian or a Buddhist. It doesn't matter. And in Israel, you can see all of us sitting together. You can see the wars. There's one side. I'm not ignoring it. But you can see also the peace in the same time. People listen to television too much, I think. What they showed on television, it's like, that's what's going on there. You should see the place. You should learn the place. Research for yourself. I went to university, and sometimes the professor didn't know what I'm talking about. So I researched it.
Absolutely.
So do your own research. Don't believe me only. I mean, believe yourself. So.
Well, Eliaz, I want to thank you again, first of all, for coming all the way. I know this is going to be probably the first of other conversations we're going to have, because the information you have is pertinent, it's fascinating, and hopefully we can connect again in the near future. I want to do this. First of all, tell us the name of the book again, please.
It's called The Jamat Inspirational People from the Bene Israeli Community.
And they can get it in the local bookstores here in Israel.
Yeah. Some of them are still have few copies, because it's my 5th book. I have several more books.
Okay, yes, sir. So for those of you who are asking about this particular one, there's a few more copies left. He's writing a new one, and those of you who may be watching this and you're not in Israel, and it's too bad. Maybe his next one, it'll be more available. I know you're doing local bookstores and everything else like that. But I'm assuming that sometimes when you travel, you take some with you to sell. Okay.
I'm working on translating my books into English and into different Indian languages like Marathi or Hindi or something like that. And
it's fascinating. I know this is the preservation of your people, your community within Israel. but as the people who've been listening to this know, you're fascinated whether you're Jewish or not, whether you're Hebrew or not. This is a fascinating discussion about the tribes of Israel and about the return to the land and the diaspora and everything. And for those of you, particularly religious, Christian, Jewish, Muslim, who have those religious discussions about Jerusalem and about the people of God, this is just an amazing thing. So I want to thank you for coming and talking with us. We've learned so much. I've learned so much. I have even so much more questions, but I have to end it. So, but this is amazing. I've learned so many things about the Bene Israel. I knew a little bit about Bene Menashe, but even that has been expanded so much, and I know that everyone appreciates it as well. This is, again, the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs. We thank you for watching again. A shout out to Dan Deker, who's the new president of the JCPA, and the vision to just allow and continue to have Jerusalem be a place for all nations to come and to partake and to learn and to see. Israel has so much to offer the world. I also, on the behalf of the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel, I hope this has been helpful to you. We will be here. If you're watching this in time before March, there's an Africa-Israel Security Conference at the end of March. I will return to Jerusalem, God say the same, with my wife for that conference. And hopefully while I'm here, get a chance to scout around a little, maybe even look up Eliab. I'll have to return.
I would be happy to. Yeah, of course.
But thank you so much for coming. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us. I hope this content, again, has been helpful to you. I know it's been fascinating to me. And go to jcpa.org and check out, so you can find out more of the resources there. Go to ibsi.org if you want to know more about our organization there as well in the States. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks.